Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fourth and Goal podcast, episode 8. I'm one of your hosts, Drew, along with Rob, who is back from his long trek in Africa. Rob, tell the people how you're doing.
I'm great, man. 5 weeks on the road, hit up about 5 or 6 countries across Africa, some pit stops in Europe, and I'm back here in Texcoco, Mexico, in North America, where at least the games are somewhat on a regular schedule. Excited to be back. A bit exhausted, but good to be back here on the farm. Good to see you, Drew. Sorry, folks, that I've missed out. Those of us that have been following along since the start. Drew's been holding it down, but I'm back, and I'm excited to be here.
Yep. We're excited to have you back in your home base. And you know what? For a guy who really hasn't been able to watch a ton of football, I will say your picks haven't been too bad. We'll get into that in a later segment. But I've been impressed with how accurate you've been compared to Vegas and myself, in spite not being able to watch a lot. But before we get into any of that, let's first get into our news and notes. And the first thing we got to talk about is the injuries. We had Justin Jefferson going on IR, Devon Achane looking like he's out a number of weeks, Matt Milano, inside linebacker for the Bills, out for the season. The week after, Tre'Davious White goes out for the season. You had James Conner down with a significant injury on IR, Anthony Richardson, significant injury. All these injuries, what are your thoughts, and which one of these injuries do you think is going to have the biggest impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's awful all around. I feel like this list gets longer every week. I don't know what's in the soil or the water these days in the NFL. It's just a tough one to see, and especially for all these professional athletes that we want to watch perform and do great. So I think you hit a lot of the main ones there. Obviously, I think the more important ones are for the contenders. The loss of Justin Jefferson almost knocks Vikings any chance of a comeback out. Their best chance is the fact that is a very weak division, and so hopefully they can squeak out a couple games against the likes of maybe not the Lions, but definitely the Bears and the enigma of the Packers, which we can also get to in a little bit. So anyways, on the defensive front, the loss of Milano is a huge L for the Bills. He is the heart and soul of that, maybe the team all around, but definitely the defense. He's the passion and the energy and the warmth that you need up in the cold Buffalo area. So I think those are the two that strike me as the most significant. I think Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew are potentially equidistant from each other in terms of ability on the playing field. So that one doesn't strike me as too much. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I think obviously Justin Jefferson, big injury for fantasy, first overall pick, because in many fantasy leagues, that's a huge loss. Jordan Addison, going to be a massive pickup if you're a fantasy head. And you're right. Like the Vikings, who already had a lot of holes in their team, losing Justin Jefferson, the biggest hole filler out there, makes it so they have no chance. Like, I think the Packers are going to be a better team than them. Yeah, the Vikings got a matchup against the Bears. They could win that, but you're right. Outside of Detroit, who I think has looked actually even better than I assumed this year, that's a weak division. But there's good enough teams in the NFC. The Rams are better than we expected. The Buccaneers are better than we expected. There's a few teams out there. I don't think the Vikings have much of a chance, but the biggest one is definitely Matt Milano with the Bills. The other conversation to talk about, the other big thing that happened before the games played, was Jonathan Taylor, 3-year, $42 million contract, $28 million guaranteed. What are your thoughts on that deal and the running back situation in Indy in general?
I mean, make that paper, boo-boo. Love to see that kind of guaranteed money for the running backs. Hopefully this is good for them. I'm not too sure because of the way Zach Moss is playing there. However, I think it's great for the Colts. They need a two-headed dragon down there because of the quarterback situation being so sketchy. That division is up for grabs, really. The Jags aren't looking the best, or they're a bit streaky, hit or miss. The Texans are definitely streaky. And so I think that let's get that ball on the ground, run it, pound it down people's throats. The Colts have a great defense, so that's the team they got to embrace. Just ground and pound, good defense, squeak out these like 19 to 24 games, something like that, right?
Yep.
And so interesting on the kind of the financial side of things. Maybe you can talk about what you think on the contract and what that means for running backs.
Yeah, I worry about this contract, and it's because of how well Zach Moss has been performing. This is a guy who was a running back in Buffalo, and they shipped him out. They traded him for Naeem Hines because he wasn't doing anything. He comes in behind this pretty decent offensive line in Indy, and without Jonathan Taylor, is going off week in, week out, and proving that you don't need a $14 million a year running back. You can work in a committee. So I worry that Jonathan Taylor, no matter what he does, no matter how good he is, won't be considered a good contract and will be another teardown in the minds of the owners, because you can just replace him. At least that's what it looks like here, and that's going to hurt running back market more. But we'll see. Maybe
you
Jonathan
can even
Taylor
see that
well.
with James Conner. Conner in Arizona. They just got that undrafted kid that went in there and scored a touchdown and ran and looked pretty good. And so all of a sudden, yeah, it's just they go down with injury so easily. Why guarantee a bunch of money? Anyways, but I think we have a bit more of a legacy question ahead of us right here. Maybe introduce us to the Bill Belichick conundrum.
Yeah, so we have the last 2 weeks have been the worst 2 weeks of Bill Belichick's career. Last week, he lost by 34 points, his worst home loss. And the only reason it wasn't his worst loss was because the week prior, he lost by 35 points. What is happening with Bill Belichick, and what are the Patriots going to do?
I mean, he's an old man, right? Like, he is getting up there in years. I don't actually know off the top, in his 70s for sure. I saw a meme the other day where it's like, can you really be considered a Hall of Fame coach once you're a Hall of Fame quarterback leaves and you don't make the playoffs more than twice? And it was Tomlin, Sean Payton, and Bill Belichick all pointing at each other in the Spider-Man pose. And so it's true, man. This is not looking good for Bill Belichick. Of course, their team is pretty awful right now. Like, they don't have a lot of good, but I mean, they have talent on that team. In the face of it, you have Juju Smith-Schuster there. You have Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield with Ramondre Stevenson. You have Mac Jones. You have some talent on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is atrocious, though, and all that talent is acting up to absolutely no good. I really think this could be, I don't know, given what he's done, it's hard to count him out so far. He really is a good X's and O's coach. I'm not sure if he's maybe just lost an edge against these young guys and all the motion packages and everything that's out there these days, but it could be the end of the road for Bill.
Yeah, I think if this keeps up, if the Patriots don't figure it out, I expect Robert Kraft to think long and hard come season's end about moving on from Belichick. Now, don't get me wrong. Someone's going to come out there and sign him. Bill Belichick, if he gets fired, is not going to be 100%. Not coaching. If he wants to coach, he will coach. And I think he can be very good in another team. I think what's happening here is the Patriot way, the Belichick way, just isn't resonating with the current team. And he's one of those coaches, he demands a lot from his players. And if that's not resonating, if he's lost the locker room, sometimes you just need a change of scenery. Like Andy Reid, they wanted him out in Philly. What does he do? He goes to Kansas City and is 10 times the coach he was in Philly when he was already a good enough coach that every team wanted him when Philly let him go.
Yeah, that's actually, I would almost love to see that, right? Let's see Bill Belichick pull a Brady. Go to a different organization, say, I don't need you, Robert Kraft. I don't need you, New England. And then go and win it with some Brock Purdy-esque character. But we'll get to Brock in a bit.
The Brock star. But that's most of the things we want to talk about. We'll talk about Brock Purdy, I'm sure, when we go through the weekly recap. What were some of the games from week 5 that you found the most fascinating that you want to talk about?
Well, that spanking Niners-Cowboys game was one of them for sure. It cannot go without mention, merely because everyone had talked it up, right? You have all the legacy of those two teams, of course. So anytime they're both kind of good, everyone hypes it up like it's the next coming of Montana and Aikman. But no, I love to see the shellacking. I thought my Steelers put on a hell of a defensive performance against the Ravens. Again, showing that is still the greatest rivalry in all of the NFL. Tough, physical, defense, run game, football out there. I thought the Packers are an enigma of a team. I didn't like what I saw out of them in prime time on Monday night against the Raiders. What we expected to see from some of the big numbers teams, such as the Chiefs winning against the Vikings, your Lions winning, of course, against which I think is the worst team in the NFL, right? The Panthers. What were you? What are your takeaways from Week 5?
I'll first go into. I still don't think the Panthers are the worst team. They're not a good team. I'm still on the bandwagon that the Bears are the worst team in the NFL. Yes, okay, they won last week against the Washington Commanders. Fine. I don't care that they won against the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders are also shit. The Bears are going to have a much tougher schedule moving forward. The Bears are not a good team. I think they're the worst team in the league, and I have said that all season long. I'm sticking by it. You know, the Panthers, they have their problems. They're not a good team, but they've had a lot tougher schedule than the Bears have had. The Bears have had a pretty cushy schedule and are 1-4.
Yeah, they have one good game, bombing it deep to DJ Moore, who didn't take his helmet off this time as he gets into the end zone. And everyone's all aflutter like Justin Fields is somehow going to be the next coming of Michael Vick.
No.
But overall, there's a couple teams out there that are still surprising me in terms of just how. So the Jags, I think, are another enigma of a team. That Jags Bills game was exciting. I think the over. Trevor Lawrence, I can't tell. Sometimes I think he's the next coming of Brock Purdy. Other times I think he's just going to be another Jags quarterback. But those two, that AFC, the top of the AFC is really a bit of I can't think of the word, a slaughterhouse or whatever, a guillotine. Teams are going in and getting slaughtered. You got the Dolphins putting up points. Like, that's a tough division in the AFC at the top.
Yeah, I mean, the conference in general, the AFC is very tough. A lot of good teams. I think the Bills are a consistently good team. They were in London. They got some injuries. We'll see how they return from those injuries. But the Bills are not a team I'm worried about. They just clearly were not adjusted to the time there, I think. And the Jags were there the whole week. Remember, they were in London the week before. And the Bills had a great season last year and laid a turd in London last year too. This is what they tend to do when they go to London. So I still think the Bills are a consistently good team. I still think the Chiefs are a consistently good team. And I still think the Dolphins are a consistently good team. Those three, I'm not worried about those three. They might have a game where they lose here and there to another good team. You know, the Bills lost to the Jags, who a lot of people expect to be a good team. The Dolphins lost to the Bills, who we know is a good team. Right. And the Chiefs lost to the Lions, who's a good team. It's like these teams are losing to primarily good teams. So
right.
I think
you have more teams that are enigmas like the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chargers, right? These teams are like, what are we getting out of them? I think there's a couple at the bottom of the barrel, like the Broncos, that are very clear. These are awful teams, but is that like kind of mid-level of Colts? That in the AFC North, the Browns, like that is a tough division there. Those teams are eating each other alive. I can't tell if they're all, it's like the SEC. Are they all really great or all really shit teams that are just kicking each other? Like, is this the Pac-12 or the SEC of divisions?
Hey, well, the Pac-12, the top of the Pac-12 actually looks pretty good this year. So I know it's their last year.
I'm a Pac-12 fan, so you have to interpret that for what it should be.
Yeah, I'm a Pac-12 fan too. We both are. But yeah, there's definitely some teams that you don't know. Like, I think a team like the Jags, they've looked the same week in, week out. They haven't been as good as we expected, but they've been consistent. Same with, like, the Arizona Cardinals. They've been consistent. A little bit better than we thought, but still not great. The teams that confuse me the most are the Steelers. Your Steelers, you never know what they're going to get. They're going to get blown out by the Texans one week, and then go and beat the Ravens the next. And you're like, what changed? And this is the Mike Tomlin era. I have two rules in betting. Do not bet on the Cowboys and do not bet on the Steelers. And it's because those are two teams, I think they are the only two teams in the NFL that any given Sunday they will beat any team, and any given Sunday they will lose to any team. Every other team you can be like, there's teams that they will beat, there's teams that they will lose to. If they're really good, they can beat everyone, but they won't lose to everyone. If they're really bad, they can lose to everyone, they won't beat everyone. But those two teams, the only two teams out there, you never know what's going to happen, and it's inconsistent.
And we're the epitome of that this year because we have so much talent on that team, but we're also a little rough around the edges. And so sometimes we show up, sometimes we don't. And that's happened with the Steelers for years. I have a lot of friends from the Bay who are Raider fans. And at the peak of like those Big Ben era Steeler teams, when we were just winning 13 games a year, or maybe 11, but we would always lose to like the 3-13 Raiders somehow during that season, or So anyways, let's maybe look ahead to week 16, unless you have any final comments on week 15.
I think you mean week 6, unless final comments on week 5.
Yeah, sorry, I'm adding a 10.
You went into the future. What do you know? Let me know. I need to make my bets, man. We're gonna get to that later, but
well, speaking of bets, I really wish I had known that the Jacksonville Jaguars had done the extra week in London, because that's one of those savvy betting against like the Vegas public sort of bets where it's like, yes, that team is going to smash because you have the Bills that have been traveling or whatever. That's one of those good insider tip sort of like got the horse's number sort of picks. So that would have been a good sleeper and they were the underdog in that game.
They were the dog. They were dogs.
Yeah. Next, it's one of those like when someone's playing a back-to-back in Denver in the NBA on the road, right? Like they tend to lose those games, kind of things.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the week 6 games. I'll put up. We'll start with my picks on the screen so we can see some of the games and some of my picks. So a quick recap. I didn't have the best week last week. I went 7-7, but I'm still 48-30 on the season. The week before, I went 13-3, which really helped me out. I had a banger of week 4 picks.
We've both had a 13-3 week.
We have. We're a little inconsistent on when we do it, but we're consistent. We've both been pretty good this year. Looking at the Thursday night football game, Broncos Chiefs. I mean, that should be a slaughter. That is one of the best teams versus one of the worst teams in the home of one of the best teams. But some of the really exciting games we got going on this week, I think the Colts Jags, that could be a battle for the division there. I think that's a sneaky good game.
Yep. And you got the JT show there, right? A lot to watch for. You got Gardner Minshew. Everybody loves to root for or against him. That is an underrated, that's a football lover's game right there.
Yep. You got 49ers, Browns, two very good defenses and two of the best defensive ends in the league, Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett going head-to-head. So if Deshaun Watson plays, I think that'll be a really good game. If it's DTR again, it's 49ers. It's over. And Seahawks Bengals, another really good matchup, I think. Joe Burrow started to look like Joe Burrow last week. I'm still not completely sold on Joe Burrow, but you'll notice in my picks, I actually picked the Bengals this week, and I don't often pick the Bengals. I've ridden high this season betting against the Bengals. But
you haven't. I actually switched my stance on this. I've taken the Seahawks on the road, which I was a little suspicious of, but I think it's because I got burned a little bit too early on the Bengals, and maybe this is my penance, but I do like the Seahawks team a bit.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you got burned on the Bengals, so you're shying away. I've done nothing but win off the Bengals, so I'm leaning into it, and we're going the opposite way this week, which was surprising. I thought we'd definitely be on the same wavelength on this one.
Yeah, that was a tough pick for me to go against. I do have enough money, I guess, on the long-term Bengal horizon that I could see them drop another game here. Seattle's coming off of a bye, let's not forget, so they're going to be a little bit more well-rested. I see this as a classic, also perhaps overreaction game by the general public, where, that play coming out of the halftime where Burrow just hit Jamar Chase like it was LSU playing against college kids again. It actually reminded me of Brady Moss that first year. I think it was that opening game against the Jets when Moss was just beating double coverage. Two deep coverage like he was playing against kids. So that connection, they looked electric, but they were also playing against the Cardinals. Let's not forget. So that could be a bit of an overreaction by the public, which is kind of where I was going there. What I really would have loved was like Seattle plus 3.5 if we were looking at spreads.
Yeah.
Some of the other games that I thought were kind of exciting heading into this week, I actually think the Cardinals-Rams could be an interesting game there. Cardinals are a team that is maybe not as bad as everyone thought heading into the year, and I think that division, those two teams could end up actually being in the run for the money. Again, also another game that's like that with these frisky teams is Saints-Texans. Saints are playing really well. The Texans can show up and play or show up and not play. That game is either going to be like a 13-7 dud or like a 41-35 like fireworks blowout. I believe it's in New Orleans. So that's an exciting.
Houston.
Those are two games. Oh, it's in Houston, all right, but it's similar turf, similar terrain. So those were the games that I had kind of earmarked, as well as another game that could matter for divisional purposes is the Ravens-Titans. Particularly, I think that's a very boring game because I hate the Ravens and the Titans are just bleh. So I have no intention of watching a single second of that game, but it could have some far-reaching consequences on some wild cards down the road.
Yeah, you talk about the Cardinals and Rams potentially being a good game. I actually have the Rams as my lock of the week this week. Now, I want to be very clear. The only reason I have the Rams as my lock of the week is because I've already used everyone who I'd like to lock of the week. And for those of you who've been following us along know, we try to make our locks of the week survivor focused. So these are picks that you could make if you were in a survivor league. So I've already picked the Bills as a lock of the week. I've already picked the 49ers as a lock of the week. I've already picked the Chiefs as a lock of the week. And I've already picked the Dolphins as a lock of the week. Those four, I would take all four of those over what I've taken, but I already took all four of those. So my fifth option is Rams over Cardinals at home. We'll see how that plays out, but not as big a fan of it. Rob, on the other hand, we'll put up his picks here. He got the Dolphins, a much better pick than mine.
Yeah, I'm liking that at home against the Panthers, which I think is maybe one of the worst teams in the league. Definitely one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst. We have contention against that. The other one I was looking at was potentially the Raiders at home against that shitty Patriots team. But that's always like a frisky Bill Belichick could come out and win this game sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to stay away. I do want to comment that I am impressed with my own performance. I am one game behind Vegas at 46-32 for the season, but I have been like on the road, on holiday, driving a lot, taking planes. And so I haven't watched as much football as I would like. And so I am impressed with my performance so far, but hoping to turn it around and get above Vegas in the coming weeks. But 9-5 last week, looking to turn it around. There's a couple of underdogs. I took the Commanders again. I'm big on the Commanders against the Falcons, who, again, just not an impressive team. I think they're beaten up on the strength of their schedule so far. The Lions, that could be a trap game for the Lions in Tampa Bay, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a game I'm overly confident in for the Lions. I think the Lions are the better team, but anytime you go on a road against a team who's been pretty good, and let's not forget the Buccaneers are coming off a bye week. They'll have 2 weeks to prepare for the Lions. This is definitely a game that better teams than the Lions have consistently dropped in the NFL, so it's going to be a question as to how the Lions come in. But yeah, so speaking of which, we'll put Vegas's picks up here for a second. So as you can see, we're all very tight. Rob is at 46-32 on the season. Vegas 47-31, and I am 48-30. So 1 week could change it all. And to point out, beating Vegas is not easy because that means every time you call an upset, you have to get your upsets right more often than you get your upsets wrong to beat Vegas. Now, it doesn't matter when you call the same as Vegas because well, if you win, they win. If you lose, they lose. But it's calling the
And that's
upsets
what's
not
tough
easy.
when you go through these picks, and especially if you know the Vegas. Sometimes I do it knowing Vegas's thoughts ahead of time. Other times I don't like to look at what Vegas thinks, so it doesn't cloud my judgment. But it is really tough when you're going down that list and being like, "Shit, I picked the favorite." Like I'm aligned with Vegas, because then all of a sudden you're like, "All right, well, where do I deviate?" Which could bring us to Uncle Bob's betting corner. If
Yep.
you're ready to hop in and
Yeah,
take a
let's
look
do
at
it.
some of the numbers for the week. So, for those of you that have been following along, Drew and I are placing real life money. We have $100 that we are placing throughout the year. You can place it $100 one week. We have doing it a bit piecemeal. Drew tends to go one solid bet at a higher price. I like to sprinkle me around a little bit, as you'll see. So, looking at the numbers for the year, Drew is mortal, everybody. He did lose his first bet of the year in week 5, but he is up a whopping $159, and that is in profit, ladies and gentlemen, heading into week 6. That is a 199% return on the year. So, give it up for Drew, everybody. Although he did, as I said, lose his first bet. So perhaps we are seeing a turnaround or a regression to the mean there, but hopefully not. We want to see all of our friends win all the money and fuck Vegas over. Let's hear it, Drew.
That bet is why I'm picking the Bengals this week, because when I made that bet, I did a parlay. I picked the Cardinals to beat the Bengals and picked the under in that game because I was so confident that Joe Burrow would do what he'd done the last 4 weeks and just not show up. He finally did, so I said, you know what? I lost $10. I'm going to put my money back on the Bengals. That's why I picked the Bengals over the Seahawks this week.
Exactly. I had a feeling it had something to do with that, right? You went too far on the shitting on the Bengals bandwagon, and now you had the pendulum swing that back.
Exactly.
So your boy Uncle Bob over here is in the net green compared to the legend, the myth himself, Drew, not quite at 199%. I'm up a cool $20, $19.27, which is 55% return. So we are definitely outperforming the S&P 500 and all the other investments that you could have made this year outside of a few choice stocks. So although I'm pleased with where I'm at, hoping to turn that around and build that stack up a little bit. I had a bit of a stumble week 4. I got a little on the sauce over in Africa, was really big on the Bengals recovery, and they fell flat. So that was not great for me in week 4, but I recovered with an easy 2-team parlay last week, which was the Lions and the Chiefs. Put me back up with a quick $4 win on a $5 bet. So heading into this week, Drew, you have a relatively quick and easy bet. Let's hand it over to you to hear what your bet is heading into week 6.
Yep, I just got $10 on a one-leg parlay, but 2 things happening. That's Cooper Kupp and A.J. Brown to combine for 200 or more receiving yards. Cooper Kupp, through 1 game, was over 100 receiving yards. A.J. Brown, last 3 games since he blew up at Jalen Hurts, over 100 receiving yards in each game. This pays out at plus 210. I acknowledge that at the very least the Eagles are going up against the Jets. That's a tough defense. But I still think Cooper Kupp can carry this. I think Jalen Hurts is going to keep trying to feed A.J. Brown like he has been the past few weeks. And at plus 210, these are good odds. $10 on that. That is the bet I have going into this week.
Yeah, I placed that same bet just for $2 because I had a bit more sprinkled around. I like it for the exact same reasons as you. Let's make a little correction. I don't think that Jets D is that great. I think the cornerback that will be guarding Brown in Sauce Gardner is the better aspect.
You are sleeping on Quinnen Williams, that defensive front. No, that defense is
fine. I guess it's their
around.
offense. I guess it's their offense that keeps them on the field too long, and then they kind of get a little tired out there. So yes, they do have a good squad. But again, I like that for the exact same reasons. $2 on it. I took another one that's a bit more of a gamble. $1 on Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase to combine for 250 receiving yards. That is a lot. Bold. That is a steep choice. I might be, again, I'm picking against the Bengals, so this might be a bit of a hedge in my heart. I just threw $1 on that. It's given plus 500. So that seemed like a safe $1. Kind of throw it out there and see if those guys ball out. The main bet I'm placing for the week is $5 on money line 49ers and Jags in a parlay. So they both have to win straight up, and that's going to give me plus 112. So I got $5 on that, $2 on the same bet as Drew at plus 210, and then $1 on that stretch, 250 receiving yards, combined receiving yards for Tyreek and Jamar.
Yeah.
So with that, any
So-
final
so-
comments on the bets, Drew?
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing I'm going to say is one of these days, Rob, you're going to have to bet a bit bigger if you're going to want to catch up. You're a fair bit behind. You're going to need to place a bit of a Hail Mary, bit of a deep shot. You can't keep going with these dinky bets if you're going to catch up with me, unless you're just banking that I'm going to shit the bed over here, but we'll have to see.
Slow and steady in the beginning. I like.
Oh, guys, it looks like Rob's connection is
Sir, I will be a.
okay. You'll
Exactly.
be catching up
I
by
like to
Christmas.
bet.
Sure.
I like to have a little bit of money. I don't want to lose all my money up front. So let's get a little bit. We ramp up the bets as we get towards the end of the year. And I like to see these teams and how they're performing. I get a little bit more confident as we go down the stretch. And I think we know who we thought they are. So with that, we close out Bookie Bob's betting corner. I always fuck up the name every time. We'll have to do that a little bit more consistently so we can get some ad dollars on it later down the line. Drew, looking forward to week 6. This will be the first week in which I can sit and watch these games properly and really take it in. And so let's do it. The National Football League is in full force.
Yep, absolutely. And a quick service announcement for anybody who is watching here. Remember to follow us and subscribe here on YouTube, where you can see our weekly podcast. You can also see daily shorts. You can also subscribe to us, the same channel, at 4th and Goal 101 on Instagram and TikTok, which has the short form videos too. On Twitter, if you want to see our weekly picks, as well as any additional bets we are putting in as the week goes on. We film this on Tuesday, so sometimes some bets come up that we like closer to game time. We'll post all those ones that we want to count towards our league bets there. And finally, you can also follow on Twitch as well, at 4th and Goal 101. I've been Twitch streaming every Thursday night football game, every Monday night football game, and every Sunday night football game. We got a pretty good community. Rob, you just came back. You saw the stream on Monday night. What were your thoughts on it?
It's a lot of fun, folks. Come on down. We got a great community. A lot of folks like ourselves, degenerate gamblers, fantasy football addicts, and all-around football fans. So if you want to come watch the games with us, we'll see you on Twitch at 4th and Goal 101. Catch us, as Drew said, on all the major platforms. And we look forward to bringing more content. Go Steelers, as always. And thanks, Drew. Until next week.
Sounds good. Until next week. We'll see y'all later.